designed to isolate prisoners who they insist are out of control, too violent, too unpredictable to be housed with the run-of-the-mill murderers and rapists. But to the men who are locked up there, especially in its shoe, Pelican Bay is simply torture, a living hell where inmates are brutalized and sometimes driven insane.
Up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much.
Behind this razor wire is the infamous shoe at Pelican Bay, its security housing unit. Windowless, high-tech, silent, grim, concrete bunkers. Pelican Bay's shoe is inside Pelican Bay State Prison, with 1,500 inmates, incorrigible, sent here from California's other prisons to isolate them.
The CDC is passionate about, yes, disempowering the so-called prison gangs, right? Disempowering those organizations that have a lot of authority over the convict population, and also making those organizations look increasingly unacceptable to the masses.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into
You commit 5 murders on the outside, you don't go to Pelican Bay. If you commit 10 murders on the outside, you do not go to Pelican Bay. If you staff and you other inmates, you go to Pelican Bay.
The CDC tries to create an impression that they're dealing with the incorrigibles, the kind of James Cagney of the prison population. What they're often dealing with is the wretched of the earth, people who are mentally retarded, mentally ill.
Right, it's, you know, you went through a whole season of like, if you were in Pelican Bay, you were the worst of the worst, right? These are people, you would never allow these folks in your communities. They're the worst of the worst and incorrigible. You know, these aren't just bad guys. These are the worst. Literally, these are the worst of the worst, right? And then the hunger strikes happen.
Todd Asker, according to the Department of Corrections, is a member of a white racist gang, the Aryan Brotherhood. He was sent to the Pelican Bay SHU because he assaulted a guard and killed another inmate.
The dude, right? But it was in self-defense.
Why'd you kill the guy?
The guy wanted me to give him some money and all this. He felt I owed him, right? And I didn't feel I owed him nothing.
So you killed him?
They said I stabbed him numerous times.
Assaulted a guard?
Yeah, a few assaults on the guards.
So, I wanted to start off a couple things, just defining some terms, the non-designated program facilities, and if you could just give us a short rundown of those so everybody kind of knows what we're talking about, that would be awesome.
Sure. So
And now a message from Coffee Brand Coffee. Coffee Brand Coffee is American-owned, roasted and shipped right here in the U.S. with fresh roasted flavors like blackberry cream and my personal favorite, blueberry cobbler. They've got coffee for everyone. I don't know if you're a coffee person, but I am. They've also got organic teas like Sunpower Green and Breakfast Earl Grey, and even cocoa for people who prefer cocoa. So if you're looking for coffee, down below the link, promo code Gangish, 5% off.
the CDC started, like I said, the non-designated program facilities. It's also called 50-50 yards, although that's a bit of a misnomer. And the integrated yards, right? So it's all talking about the same thing. And essentially prior to that, you had general population yards, in same classifications and everything else, but they were just GP yards. And then you had, most recently before the integration, you had GP yards, and then you had S&Y yards, sensitive needs yards.
Pelican Bay, and that's a success story about isolating predators and victimizers away from regular inmates who want to program and go back into society.
There's no such thing as 50-50, right? It's a drop of dirt, pollutes the whole pool. You know what I mean? So if you have one S&Y type person, if you have one person with predatory offenses against women or children, if you have one person who's a known rat, if you have one person who's a dropout, and they're allowed to hang out on the yard and kick it, and you don't do anything about it, then that by extension makes you trash as well.
They mix with each other, all the guys in this pod?
No, they do not. Any communication they have is through the doors. If they come out of their pods. They will come in contact with no other inmate. They can talk, but they have no physical contact.
Good God. And this can go on for years in here?
People who were smearing themselves with their own feces, drinking out of their toilet bowl, eating their feces. Even people are eating themselves. Some people in Shu will become howling, violent, agitated, out of control.
Convicts and correctional officers in California's prisons have told us that segregating them has in fact lowered the level of violence among the rest of California's prison population.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Anxiety, filling up every space, no privacy. And silently, it could build and build until you finally see, whoa, it's taking over, damn no closure, moving closer. No exposure, I just
What were we supposed to, if I'm a prison administrator, if I'm Sacramento, I'm going to play Sacramento right now. What am I supposed to do with these people? You've wiped 30,000 people off the yard. That's an estimate. That's actually a close estimate. About 30. There's about 30,000 PC or SNY sensitive needs inmates in the state of California. So what was I supposed to do with these?
Well, see, and it's a good question. Were all those people wiped off the yard, or were some of them angled with the carrot and stick? In the sense of, see, not everybody on the S and Y side was somebody that got whacked. You had people that would run up a drug debt, and I don't feel like paying their debt, so they go to the S and Y side, right? You have people behaved in ways, sometimes, not always, but you have a number of circumstances in which people behaved in ways they probably wouldn't have otherwise, because they knew they could escape the accountability of being in the general population by just going to the CO and be like, hey man, I don't feel comfortable here anymore. There was a time in prison in which the response to I don't feel comfortable here is, oh well, it's prison, you shouldn't feel comfortable. Get the fuck out there, right? It was difficult for people to roll it up off a yard. Okay, but you're gonna need to tell us a whole lot.
So, if you think right now that, it's gonna stop with the Bulldogs, no. This dude wants to implement where every group has to go. This is his own experiment from what I'm being told. Let's move the Bulldogs first and let's see what happens. Let's do this and do that. So they're gonna keep on doing this until people get along. That's his goal, that's his mind. We're gonna keep forcing you guys until you guys get along.
So you had GP and SNY, and you needed a chrono to be on an SNY yard. And you get that chrono for a variety of ways. If you're a gang dropout, right, then you can go to an SNY yard. Eventually, I think you had to go through multiple steps and kind of processes before you actually get put out there. But SNY yards function just like a general population yard in terms of, you got canteen, you have visits, you have yard, you have day room, you have whatever the general population has in those places, and sometimes even more.
Around the situation, right? So if you PC up, you're leaving the gang life completely. Whether it is you found Christ, you don't want to politic, whether it is you got crossed up in politics, I'm talking about power struggles, I'm talking about anything from getting caught with a kite, anything from getting caught, maybe losing some money, maybe doing something, not paying taxes on some things that you might be bringing into the pen. For whatever the situation is, maybe it could be anything from even speaking on the wrong person, and now you kind of in this little thing where you getting pushed out the circle and you no longer popular type of little vibe. Or it could be you owing a dope debt and you ain't got the money, but you got to have it. So you went ahead and took it, but you ain't got the money to pay for it. So now you in some hot water. So what you do, you take off.
I've talked to a few people, man, and I got a little bit of information that's going on. What's been going on? So first and foremost, this whole situation with the Bulldogs, this wasn't no fluke. All this stuff has been pretty much staged. This is the first group that they're trying to force the reintegration on. This is all an experiment. This is all a plan pretty much by an individual named Marion Spearman. You know what I'm saying? And so Marion Spearman is the executive director of all males in CDCR. Okay, I did a little bit of research into this individual. Yes, he has a correctional background, but he was a warden at a level 1 facility. There wasn't too much details about his past. So I don't know if he was just worked level 1 prisons, if he's from out of state, right? But he has said, right, that they offered the debriefing process years ago to a lot of inmates who went to the SNY yard, only to form gangs that were worse than the original gangs. These are from his mouth, okay? And so they're not going to allow any gangs to dictate their program. They're not going to let the inmates dictate it anymore. So this was the first stage of them showing people in California, as well as in the prison system, that the gangs are not going to run these yards anymore. You know what I'm saying? We're not going to tell you what yard you can and can't go to.
The integration thing. And that's cool. You know, they're using the best that they have, the best of their knowledge, the best of, you know, they're getting facts from people that they talk to on the phone who are coming off these yards, or hell, they might even be talking to people who are still on these yards. And that's cool. I'm gonna talk to you for somebody who was actually in them shoes as a deuce fiver, as a 2-5er, as somebody who literally was gonna be put up to be integrated if I was still in prison at the time when they decided to do it. So there was a time back in like 2015, maybe a year or two before, but I want to say 2015, where, you know, everybody really thought it was going to start happening like right then and there. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes you'll get a memo, it doesn't have a date on when they're going to start, it just says that they're going to start. Not really understanding that CDCR has a slower process to implementing their new recipes and the perfect concoction of trying to tranquilize inmates and have the less fortunate not survive. Now, what I do want to say is that when I would gauge people's interactions when we talk, or we'd talk about what it would be like, I never gauged any sense of weakness, any sense of fear, any sense of nothing. Like, and 100% I felt it. 100%. Everybody that I've ever discussed this topic with, or we'd come out, we'd laugh about it because we knew we was ready. Everybody was ready to get on them yards and start smashing. And there was no...
So instead of throwing all the groups all at once, like, you know, this is the early stages. Bam, bam. Now, once they're done with them, they're going to probably move on to the next group, I've been told. Put the next group. Who could it be? It could be the 2-5ers. It could be the Northern Riders. It could be the Zapatistas. It could be any of these groups. But this is the whole goal. So if you really think about it, all this stuff was planned. You know, from the Bulldogs being moved to Ironwood out of nowhere, right? From Corcoran, to everyone that was in Soledad, they were moved to Folsom. To everyone that was in High Desert was moved to Pelican Bay. If they've been programmed on these yards with no issues, why would you move them? You know what I'm saying? So all this, like I said, was a plan, right? To put them in a bad position to set an example. You know what I'm saying? They figured the Bulldogs would be the first group that they would try to send, and just now next they're going to keep on sending different waves.
And I heard a story, you know, a while back, amusing, but also just kind of shows this divide within CDC. We had a bulldog from Salinas Valley, and they were like, hey, if we're going to Lancaster, we're going to send you to Lancaster. So they send him. He gets to Lancaster, and in R&R, they're like, hey, no, pump the brakes, right? Stop. You're not going to stay here. You're going right back to Salinas. And literally brought a van, right? Didn't put him in a hole to wait for another bus going in that direction. None of that. Left him in his little holding spot in R&R, called for a van, right? Uber, here comes a van, threw in a van, drove his ass to his property right back to this valley. Here you go, right? Which shows that, and I don't know the inner workings of the politics within CDC, the government agency, right? So apparently Sacramento's pushing a line, it seems to me. Sacramento's pushing a line. But the wardens and the administrators of these different prisons are like, nah, fool, not on my watch. Not in my backyard. I don't want this headache. These fools are all crazy. They're all going to try to kill each other.
By a California prisoner, April 2019. These are letters from California prisoners. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yesterday, we received our first group of general population active prisoners, and the whole event quickly turned into a spectacle. Over 100 prisoners flooded the yard last night in anticipation of these active prisoners. Their purpose was to physically assault these general population prisoners if they attempted to assault any SNY prisoner. While I myself did not go outside, I am guilty of looking out the window in anticipation of seeing some violence. Once I saw how these GP prisoners were virtually swarmed, However, and once I heard and saw how some prisoners became giddy with excitement at the possibility of seeing someone get hurt, my mood changed from one of expectant spectator to one of repulsion, anger, and empathy. Most disturbing of all, however, was the officers literally abandoned these incoming prisoners to their fate. Officers, some not even in gear, simply waited on the sidelines for something to happen, while packs of SNY prisoners taunted, intimidated, and pushed up on these prisoners, asking them if they were here to program or get stupid, waiting for the wrong answers. All of the prisoners who came to this yard stayed. 100 prisoners stayed, general population. However, about an hour prior to this, other GP prisoners were taken to another yard where we know something happened because we saw everybody proned out on the ground.
So obviously they're gonna put the most dangerous PC inmates on the GP yards. And I mean, if we're gauging on a 1-to-1 spectrum, right? You put my C file up against your C file up, you could pick 10 level 4 active inmates and put them with 10 level 4 active PC gang members, and guess who has a more active C file? Not the GP.
Because any correctional officer that's been in the system, that's worked at real like level 2, 3, 4, or even a real level 1, right, would know that there's no coexisting with these groups right now. You know what I'm saying? And so it seems like for now, they're going to bring the Bulldogs more into the active side. Instead of bringing actives towards the Bulldog side, they're just going to force them out there. Now the Bulldogs are going to go wherever they're told. They're not going to sign no chronos. If you tell me to go, they're going to go.
So what will happen? We used to go to yard and talk about this because we were the ones that were getting the memos. If you was locked up in 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18, shit, you was getting them memos. You was getting the memos about the enhanced program yards where they was bringing in microwaves and shit, tablets and shit. You was getting the memos about the integration.
So if you notice, they all got moved in scheduled times, right? So now in these incidents that happened, right, just so you know, there was an incident in Folsom I reported last week. I didn't go into details. It happened in the chow hall. One Bulldog was stabbed. Now, this is what I'm being told. I'm trying to get more details. So, I mean, there could always be room for error, so bear with me. That's my disclaimer. But they're pretty positive and sure from what they've gathered that 2 Bulldogs were stabbed in the Pelican Bay incident. Now, there's different rumors about what happened. Some are saying pill call, some are saying medical escort, but it was 2, they said. No one died. There was a rumor that a Bulldog died. Nope, no Bulldog died or nothing like that, right? But an incident happened, which was bound to happen.
I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I've been feeling weird, I can't seem to focus good enough. Nothing's really clear, sometimes it could be a little tough. I just need to feel like the end's inside.
So then, then the hunger strikes happened, the Ashker lawsuit happened, and the Ashker lawsuit happened, and the Ashker lawsuit happened.
Todd Ashker, according to the Department of Corrections, is a member of a white racist gang, the Aryan Brotherhood. He was sent to the Pelican Bay SHU because he assaulted a guard and kicked another inmate.
And the Ashker lawsuit happened.
I killed the dude, right? But it was in self-defense.
Why'd you kill the guy?
The guy wanted me to give him some money and all this. He felt I owed him, right?
Right, a series of steps are taken. And the SHU gets, for all intents and purposes, empty. And the first piece of people to come out of the SHU are those who have been back there, because the lawsuit, the Ashker lawsuit, was those who have been in solitary confinement consecutively for 10 years or more and not as punishment for a crime. So you go to solitary confinement if you commit a crime, you have the potential to go to the SHU if you commit a crime in prison, right? Normally what would be considered a felony, drug trafficking, having a weapon, stabbing somebody, that sort of thing. But those things, like with any crimes, those have ceilings in terms of what the punishment is, right? So if you correctional officer in the Department of Correction, that is a 5-year SHU term, period. That's it. That's not you go to the SHU forever. It's a determinate time because it's a punishment. It's an action and a reaction. The gang validations, and this was the big issue legally for decades, the gang validation is not based on crimes. It's based on classification.
CDC's argument over the years, including when I was filing writs and everything else, right? CDC's argument is, well, it's just kind of a coincidence that those who commit felonies in prison get reclassified to be housed here for punishment. And it also happens to be the place that we put validated prison gang members and validated prison gang associates. But that's as a matter of classification, not punishment. So this dude whacks a CO, he gets punished and he gets put in the Corcoran SHU or the Pelican Bay SHU or the Tehachapi SHU. This person is labeled by reliable confidential informants that we don't have to tell you about as a gang member, as a prison gang member. They just happen to get rehoused, and it happens to be the same place as the dude who killed the CO, right? Because legally, those protections and those entitlements are different. And that was the argument, is this is punishment. If it's punishment, I have a right to face my accuser. I have a right to due process. I have a right to these constitutional protections that theoretically everybody in the United States has a right to when faced with a criminal issue. CDC said we don't have to afford you any of that because it's classification. It's an administrative decision, not a legal one.
So I got a little update. Since Susanville's closed down, they've moved all the inmates, a lot of them, right? I believe the level 2s, I want to say went to, a lot of them were going to San Quentin or Jamestown, right? But the level 3s have been moved to High Desert B Yard, okay? This is a SNY yard in High Desert. These inmates from Susanville are GP, okay? So they're already anticipating issues that are going to kick off in High Desert. Administration knows it, they're still doing it. This is probably going to be maybe the first wave or first incident to where they've really brought a whole bunch of people, put them in there, and they're going to see what happened. They basically moved almost a whole yard, right, to a facility.
As a lot of you guys know, this whole integration policy, kind of as a response to, emptying out the SHUs and the end of hostilities and signs that the end of hostilities was actually working, in the sense that these groups that are traditionally at war were not going to war with each other. CDC said, cool, you know what? We're going to throw everybody together, right? And make these 50-50 yards, which is an odd name. It's really not 50-50 nothing, but that's what they called it. And everybody said it's never going to work, right? Long before I was on YouTube, you could find statements of mine in other media, newspapers and news accounts, radio stations, very much against it, very much against the integration. I felt like it was a setup for people to catch more time and to get hurt, that it was a solution without a problem.
Because prior to that happening, you also have this thing called the end of hostility, right? In which there's agreements made and there's understandings that are come to by people who have a lot of influence in spreading that word. So the worst of the worst get out of the SHU and they go back to the general population, and the people that have been called animals for so many years by CDC, they're drinking coffee in a yard, and it's not pandemonium. It's not the end of the world. The yard did not erupt in violence. These savage prison gang leaders who are supposedly orchestrating murders on a regular basis from their little tomb of a cell and can't be restrained, and all they want to do is attack COs, and all they want to do is attack each other.
Okay, those that think of down class from that yard over there in Susanville, they moved to other level 2 facilities. Those they couldn't, they're moving to the B yard. Okay, so this is probably going to be the next step that's going to be going on with this reintegration. Okay, it's going to be all bad. Now, I'm trying to interpret the message that says C and D yard are also moving to B yard. So I think that's probably High Desert. Okay, so this is going to be an interesting situation right here, man. What I'm hearing from over there, they already know it's going to be bad. There's going to be bloodshed. They're already anticipating it, but they have no other. They have nothing more to do than uphold whatever policy that's being enforced by Sacramento.
So with the Bulldogs, CDC said we're going to force you, right? You're going to have to get along. And they sent them to a bunch of different prisons. And there was bloodshed a lot of times, right? None of this has been without bloodshed. So I don't mean to undermine the sacrifices and the expenses that occurred because of folks being put together. You know what I mean? So these folks, the Bulldogs, they get sent to all these different places. And there's different rumors that go, oh, they won't go on the yard, or they got locked it up, or CTQ'd, or this or that. And what's true and what's not in a lot of those, I don't know, man. What I do know is in some places they went, they came outside and they got dealt with, right? And then other times they had the upper hand and went outside and they did the dealing, right? They were the dealer. It kind of went both ways, right? It's not an issue of who's tough or who's with the business. You're talking about a bunch of, oftentimes, level 4 convicts with blood on their hands that everybody wants to survive. And if I know that you want to, you'd be amazed what I could do to try to make sure I stay alive. It's just how it goes, right? And that doesn't matter what you rock with. So they sent to all these places. They're like, we're gonna force it. Well, here's the update. They're all coming back. They're all being brought, right? They're all being brought back to the places in which they were sent out from.
Man, because it's gonna get serious, man. And you know, some people might say, they're all criminals. I get that, but there's some people out there that they have family members. Every family member has been affected with someone going to prison or rehab. I guarantee that. You know what I'm saying? And so we gotta really, you know, people gotta really make a push. If you really care about your loved ones, do what you gotta do. Don't wait for answers. Go find them. Make some calls. Push up. You know what I mean? Get together. Find a support group. You know, the more people push to address whatever concerns, man, the more you can assure that your men are going to come home safe. Because none of these dudes, actives, are going to say anything. None of these bulldogs are really going to sit there and say, oh, I can't go to yard. You know what I mean? And even the dudes that are on the SNY side, a lot of them are going to do what they got to do too.
Of whether or not we're gonna win or lose. Of course we're gonna win, because the fight that we're doing to win is, we're not fighting to remove. We're not fighting to X someone completely off the map. No. We're the underestimated. We're fighting for a place on the yard. So it's different. When you're fighting for a place and when you're fighting to remove somebody, you gotta come with more than you think you even have. You gotta be able to completely wipe somebody. And then you gotta ask yourself, do you have the numbers? Do you have the strength? Do you guys even have the real intent to remove? Really? No, let's speak about it, right?
And now a message from Coffee Brand Coffee. Coffee Brand Coffee is American owned, roasted and shipped right here in the US with fresh roasted flavors like blackberry cream and my personal favorite, blueberry cobbler. They've got coffee for everyone. I don't know if you're a coffee person, but I am. They've also got organic teas like Sunpower Green and Breakfast Earl Grey, and even cocoa for people who prefer cocoa. So if you're looking for coffee, down below the link, promo code Gangish, 5%